Hey guys, this is Fide Master Michel. Welcome to lesson number 2 of our course, How to Play Chess, from complete beginner up to club player, and maybe even more. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Come and join this challenging journey. Today we're going to learn what is notation in chess, and also we're going to learn some basics about the game, about playing, things that we need to know to play better chess game. That being said, let's get started. So notation in chess is actually pretty simple. We're going to use algebraic notation. This means that the files have names, and these names are letters. So we can see that this is the L file, we can see the A here at the bottom, and also this is the B file, we have a B here, and just like that, C file up to the H file. The same thing about the ranks. For example, they have names, and the names are with numbers. So this is rank number 1, and also we can see the number 1 over here, and this is rank number 2. And just like that, we will have like 8 ranks. In algebraic notation, we assume that white pieces are always on the first rank. So this is always rank number 1 when white pieces are over here. If white pieces are over the other side, this is going to be rank number 1. That's the way we understand algebraic notation. So just like that, we can say, for example, that this square is included on a file and a rank. So it could be like the F file and the rank number 4. So that square will have a name, and the name of that square is F4, letter first, number after the letter. So we're going to do that with every single square. And for example, this square here is going to be C file and 6 rank. That's C6. And also we can say, for example, that this is F7. Just like that, we can use the names of the squares to describe moves. For example, let's say we have the move knight here. We can say that this is the move knight F3 because this is the F file and this is rank number 3. And if black plays something like knight over here, we can say that this is the move knight C6 because this is the C file and this is the rank number 6. When we are writing the moves, we can assume that all the pieces are going to be named with the first letter of their actual name. So for example, the king is going to be a K, and the queen is going to be a Q, and the bishop is going to be a B, and the rook is going to be an R. So the only problem is with the knight, because as you can see, the knight starts with a K, just same as the king. So for the knight, we're going to use an N to avoid this confusion. And also, there's something we need to say about the pawns, and it is that when you move a pawn, we don't need to write P. If you don't see any P's before the name of the square, we can assume, and we should assume, that we are talking about a pawn. So for example, if we play the move pawn here in this position, we should say that this is the move E4. We don't need to write pawn to E4, we just write E4 here. Notation is vital in chess because you can write your own games and analyze them later and learn from your mistakes. But also something really good is that you can read masters' games. You can see what they have been playing and you can learn from those really good games. So to study and to learn, notation is going to be really essential. Well, I think we're fine with notation by now. We're going to continue with the most important tactics that we have in chess. So first of all, we need to understand what tactic is. And tactic is like a sequence where you can get some advantage. In general, we are talking about material advantage, but not necessarily. We can also talk about, for example, giving checkmate with a tactic sequence, something you are forcing and then you end up giving checkmate. But also, for example, we can talk about a tactic sequence where we just get some positional advantage. We're not gonna work with that by now. But well, that can also happen. So we're going to start working with this tactic that we call a fork, which is of course very important. So let's see, for example, a position like this where black has a king here and a queen here, and it is white to move. In this position, white can play something really strong, and they can capture black queen. So they can play the move knight d6, and then black king is going to be in check, and also they're going to be attacking the queen. In a fork, one of our pieces is going to be attacking both enemy pieces at the same time. That's the idea with fork. So here, black cannot move the queen because they need to solve this problem. The king is in danger, they need to put the king away from the danger, so they need to move, and that's something they need to do. I mean, they cannot ignore this threat over here. They need to solve that problem. Moving the queen is not legal. Moving the queen is not going to happen and cannot happen in a chess game. So after this move, check, they move the king, and then we can just capture the queen, and we got the queen because of that fork. Also, we have fork with other pieces. We can see, let's say, a bishop and rook over here. In this position, white can play something very strong. The king and the queen, sorry, the king and the rook, and we can play this bishop d4, and then we're putting the king in check, but also we are getting the rook over the other side. Also, for example, we can talk about a fork with a queen, where it is white's turn, and white can play something really strong. And I will say it very soon, but if you want, you already know, I think you already have the idea, you can pause the video and try to find it. Here white can play queen e4, and the idea is that you're putting the king in check, and also you are attacking the rook. So they need to solve this problem of the threat on the king, and once they move, you can capture the rook. Let's see an example with a pawn, and also let's see an example where it's not about the king, because it can also happen that other pieces are involved in this, not necessarily the king. So in this position, white can play something really strong, and it is with this pawn. They can play pawn to e5. Let's say there is a rook here, so we avoid any surprise. So let's say we play the move, also a pawn over here. Let's say we play the move here, e5, and then you're attacking both the rook and the knight. That's a fork. So probably they are going to try to save the rook because it is worth 5 points, as the knight is only worth 3. So they should try to save the rook, and then we can get the knight. Finally, let's see an example where you can do a fork with a king. So in this position, it is white's turn, and we can play the move king f5, and then we are attacking both the knight and the bishop. As you can see, our king is attacking two enemy pieces at the same time. So also with the king, we can play a fork. Let's assume they save the bishop, then we just take the knight, and we get some advantage with this sequence. It's a tactic sequence where we are getting material advantage. Well, I think we're fine with forks. Let's talk a little about skewer. The idea with a skewer is that you're going to attack two enemy pieces over the same line. Let's see a very basic example. Black has the king here and the queen here, and it is white's turn. What should we play in this position? Here we can play the move rook d1. That is that we are attacking the king, and once the king moves somewhere, we can get the queen behind. So that's the idea with a skewer. You're going to attack two pieces over the same line, and the most valuable piece is going to be in front, so that piece will move to avoid the capture or the threat, and then we will be able to capture the piece behind. Let's see another example with a bishop over a diagonal. This time the king and the queen are both on the same line, so we can use our bishop to attack the king, and once the king moves, we will be able to capture the queen behind. So bishop here to g4, king goes, for example, to d6, and then we can take the queen behind. That's the idea with the skewer. Most valuable piece is going to be in front. Also, not necessarily the king has to be involved. It can also be with other valuable pieces, like for example the queen and the rook on the same line. We can play bishop here, attacking the queen, and once this queen moves, of course your opponent won't want to lose the queen. Well, then we will be able to capture the rook behind. They can, in this position, they can also capture the bishop, but this is still a very good trade. We got the rook and we lost a bishop, 3 points, a minor piece, and we got 5, so it's a very good trade for white. And the third tactic that we are going to learn today is going to be pin. And pin is pretty much the same thing as skewer. The difference is that this time the more valuable piece is going to be behind, and the less valuable is going to be in front. So for example, in this position we can play rook here. We have two pieces on the same line, and you're attacking the queen. We can say that the queen is pinned here, because in general they they cannot or they should not move the queen. As the king is the piece behind, they cannot move the queen. It's an absolute pin. So it's not a legal move. They're not allowed to move the queen. It cannot happen. So, for example, they can play queen takes rook, but that's a very good trade for white because we are losing a rook 5 for a queen 9. And they don't have too many options. Also, they can go back and defend the queen so they can recapture the rook, but it's still the same thing. So that's the idea with pin. Let's say queen takes rook, rook takes queen, also with check, and this is a very good advantage for white. And we can talk about other examples about pin. In a position like this, it is white to move. What can we play here to get material advantage with the tactic sequence? I will say it right now. Here we can play the move bishop g4. The more valuable piece is behind, which is the queen. They are both on the same line, so this is a pin. And here we can say that the rook is pinned. In general, they are not going to move the rook because they can lose even more material. They can do it if they want, or if they think there's something good for black, they can move the rook. So it's not like it's forbidden. It's not like that. But in general, it's not going to be a good idea as they can lose the queen, which is even more valuable than the rook. So a normal move here could be like moving the queen to try to be able to move the rook. But immediately white should take the rook and they get 5 points. Even when they lose 3 points, it's a very good trade for white. So those are the 3 most important and basic tactics that we have in chess: fork, skewer, and pin. So in your games, pay attention because they happen a lot. That being said, I think we are fine to start working a little with openings. In a chess game, in general, we talk about 3 phases of the game. We talk about the opening, that's the beginning of the game where we're bringing our pieces out to play. Then after the opening, we have the middle game where our pieces are already out and we are already in the battle fighting. And once we trade some pieces, usually when we trade the queens, we can talk about the end game. Is the final part of the game where the advantages that we collected during the middle game are going to be exploited, and we are going to convert those advantages at the end game. So that's the idea. We have 3 phases. We're going to talk a little about the first phase here, the opening. The idea with the opening is that there are 3 principles that we should stick to. The first one is going to be control the center of the board. These 4 squares are the center of the board. If you control the center of the board, you're going to control most of the things happening on the board. So that's a really important area. You need to control it with your pawns and also with your pieces. So that's the first principle. Second principle is going to be develop your minor pieces. And when we say minor pieces, we talk about knights and bishops. So observe that this principle talks about minor pieces. I'm highlighting that because we don't need to develop the queen or the rooks in the opening. That's for the middle game. And finally, the third principle is going to be castle, and castle as soon as possible. When we're in the opening, usually we are going to move these pawns to fight for the center and also to develop the bishops. So in general, the king is not going to be very well over there. So when we castle, our king is going to be behind pawns and it's going to be very well protected over there. At the same time, your rook, instead of being in the corner, is going to be much better. It's going to come over the center. It's going to be connected with the queen or maybe with the other rook when you move your queen up. So that's a good thing. Your rook is going to be ready to fight for important files on the board. So that's the thing about castling. Your king is safer and your rook is more active. That's something we need to do in the opening. So I'm going to repeat it. Control the center, develop your minor pieces, and castle. Those are the 3 things you are supposed to do in the opening. If you do those things at the beginning of your games, in general you will have a better middle game and probably a better end game, because if you start well, you have better chances to go well during the game. So I think you're ready to play your first chess games. So go to your favorite website and start playing chess. At the beginning it might be a little hard, you might be losing some games, but as you go learning here in the course, I'm sure you're going to improve and you will enjoy it a lot. If you guys have any question, let me know in the comments. Lesson number 3 is going to be over here once it's ready. Thank you so much guys, like, subscribe, see you on the next.